Thank you so much. This is Apex One Radio. It's Saturday, the 25th of January, 2025. 25 days gone into the new year. And of course, a lot is already happening around the world. Welcome to Apex One Radio. Welcome to this first segment of broadcast this beautiful Saturday here in Central Ohio. We are in the Midwestern regions of the United States of America, precisely from the age-old city of Columbus. We are in the state of Ohio, in the United States of America. Once again, thank you so much. My name is Ernest Kanjo. Marcel Adig is in Valsuch in Germany, controlling this broadcast. He's doing that digitally from that end. So, how was the working week? I guess it was a fantastic one. Well, for us in Apex One Radio, we are here once again to keep you informed, keep you educated, and of course, keep you entertained. Welcome on board. And so, this is a fresh edition of Political Point beginning on Apex One Radio. And in today's edition of the show, we will be talking about uh, the new administration in the United States of America, which is just 5 days old. But trust me, it's been a lot of water, much water flowing under the bridge. And so, once again, sit down, relax, and of course, enjoy every bit of what we will be presenting to you this Saturday afternoon on Political Points. And so, the current president of the United States of America is not unfamiliar to the country and, of course, to the rest of the world. That is because Donald Trump has been president of the United States before. And so he got to the White House for the first time. And during his first mandate in 2027, after emerging winner of the 2016 election, after a 4 years break, Trump is back and has returned to the White House. Some observers have hung on the fact that Trump is a man the world already knows. But the Trump of 2025 has definitely re-emerged with other characteristics. And so, with the Trump administration now in office, we've already seen swift action on campaign promises, policies that could significantly reshape Ain or reshape the landscape for immigrants in the United States of America, particularly. Among the contentious proposals are the ending of birthright citizenship, closing southern borders, and of course, blocking access to visa application systems. He's signed so many executive orders since taking over power on January the 20th, which we will not, which will not come back to it. But as a platform dedicated to serving the immigrant community, not just in Central Ohio, but in the state of Ohio as a whole, we are zeroing in on what these policies could mean for immigrants here and abroad. So, what impact could these changes that we are noticing have on the immigrant community here in Central Ohio? And what ripple effects might these policies send across Africa and African nations? Should African leaders take this as a wake up call and fix systemic issues that happen on the continent? Today, we'll be exploring these pressing questions, dig into the challenges, and of course, seek meaningful answers to meaningful questions. And why not seek the way forward? Well, stay tuned to this beautiful conversation which we have set for you on this platform today. And joining us to propose or to add their voices to this current conversation are Solomon Atah, who will be speaking live from Cape Town in South Africa. Solomon is a writer, a communicator, and a broadcaster par excellence. He's been with Apex One Radio since its inception, that is 10 years ago. Then also joining us is Deba Uwadiae. Deba is a seasoned journalist, editor in chief and publisher of the New Americans magazine. He is also the founder and president of the New Americans Book Fair, which happens annually in Columbus. And also joining us on the conversation is journalist Rodrigue Nyumia. Rodrigue is a political analyst specialized in American politics. He's also a broadcaster with Apex One Radio. Then Taiwo Akinlami is a writer and child rights advocate. Taiwo's been on this platform several times. He also doubles as a member of the organizing committee of the New Americans Book Fair, which happens annually. And so we have four gentlemen who will be throwing their analysis, their opinions on this current conversation, which I must say is not only happening here in the United States of America, but it's happening across the world because the president of the United States of America has a direct bearing on the rest of the world. And so, without much ado, let's dive into this conversation and start talking. So, I'm going to bring the gentlemen progressively on the platform, beginning with Solomon Atah, who is now joining us live from Cape Town. Solomon, welcome to the program. How are you doing today? Solomon, you are muted. If you unmute yourself, we'll be able to hear you.
Thank you so much, Ernest.
Welcome on board, Solomon.
Compliments to you and the panelists. And it's a wonderful time again to be on radio and to be able to comment and make some contributions to the discourses happening now after the new U.S. administration being sworn in.
Beautiful. Solomon, I'll just bring you in with this one question, which may not really concern our conversation, but taking you back to, I guess, 2013, when Nelson Mandela passed on and Barack Obama attended his funeral. Since then, I don't think any U.S. president has visited that country. Am I correct?
Absolutely, you are correct. In fact, when Barack Obama visited, it was a very important time in the life of the country. For the interest of our listeners and viewers, Barack had visited just almost in the month of July. At the time, the former president and founding father, Nelson Mandela, was still in hospital at the Pretoria Heart Hospital. I remember reporting on this channel from that hospital. And when Barack Obama visited, it was a difficult time because later on that year in December, the founding father would join our ancestors. But then it was also the 50th anniversary of the raid on Lily's Leaf, to what then led to the Livonia trial. So during that time, there was quite an interesting political time. And of course, Barack Obama mentioned that Mandela has been his lifelong hero based on his political activism and his interest in liberating South Africa from the grips of apartheid. So, in fact, no American president has visited since then. Ernest?
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Solomon. Solomon is speaking live from Cape Town in South Africa. I will bring Rodrigue Nyumia on board. Rodrigue, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm okay, Mr. Kanjo. Good afternoon to you and the fellow panelist.
Rodrigue, I'll welcome you with this question, which may not be part of our conversation as well, but which I think is important. So it so happens that elections take place in the United States, if not every year, but at least every 2 years. We have, different types of elections. But why is it that other elections, don't attract a lot of, don't attract a lot of comments, a lot of speculations, maybe fear, like the presidential elections. We don't hear people talking a lot about gubernatorial elections or even other local elections. But when it comes to the presidential election, it's the whole world that is held spellbound. Why is it so, Rodrigue?
It so happens that America is very influential around the world, and so when it comes to the presidential elections, all eyes, both internally and externally, are on who is going to be the next president because it comes with a major policy shift. It
Mhm,
every cycle, who becomes the next president affects the way America will operate with other foreign countries, NATO,
mhm,
EU, the Chinese, and even Africa. So during those times, different people have different interests. So they always look forward to see who will be the next president and how is that going to affect the relationship they have, which it's unstated, it's known. Like a Republican administration in the United States will operate differently with say the Paris Climate Accord versus a Democratic administration. This has to do in terms of funding, participation, and willingness to shift the conversation forward. So when it's election season, especially the presidential election, people are very
mhm.
interested because that affects changes that will happen possibly in the next 4 years. Ernest.
Thank you so much, Rodrigue Nyumia. Once again, welcome. I will bring Deba Uwadiae, journalist, on board. Deba, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Right. So Deba, you cover the state house in Ohio. You actually trail Governor Mike DeWine, and you've been doing that for so many years now. So I'm going to ask you this question, which is not part of our conversation as well. So tell me, why is it that there is a kind of disconnect between governors and the president of this country? It's hard, to see the president sit with all 50 governors and maybe have a talk. We've seen instances where the president has visited some states and the governors go around with their own business, not minding, if the president is, in town or not. We don't see this in other places, especially in Africa, where if the president is visiting your province or your region, then the head of that region is supposed to be there on ground to welcome the big man. So it doesn't happen here. Why so, Deba?
Thank you very much, and greetings to fellow panelists. Um, as you know very well, United States is a unique country, and the
Mhm,
democracy here, uh, the Constitution allows every state to operate somehow like semi-independent. That is,
mhm.
they have their own rules and guidelines,
Right.
and so every state has its own. Should I call it bylaws from the constitution?
Go ahead, Deba.
So that's what the United States is like. So there are certain things that the federal government will say, and states will say, no, this is out of limit. You've
Mhm,
gone beyond your boundary, and you also have the court. Everybody always
mhm.
go to the court to settle differences when there are contradictions, there are conflicts, and so that's the uniqueness of the United States.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Deba, for that. I will move to Taiwo Akinlami. Taiwo is a writer. He is a child rights advocate. Taiwo's written books, and he's been on this platform a couple of times. He too has his own story to tell. Taiwo, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Beautiful. Taiwo, since you are a writer, let me find out from you. We've noticed that every strong man in the world. Every leader, especially the president of the United States of America, when they leave office, either months down the road or years down the road, there is a book that is written about them, right? So um, tell me, uh, in your imagination, what kind of book are you envisaging for Trump whenever he is done with his last 4 years in power? And do you see writers, everyone uh, struggling to do a book on Trump, because definitely that would be big business.
Oh, thank you very much once again, and much respect to the panelists on this program. Thank you for inviting me. I think every president of a nation
Mhm,
is like one big elephant that nine blind men went to see,
mhm.
right?
Right.
So somebody touches the body. It says the elephant is like a wall. Somebody touches the
Mhm,
tusk. It says the elephant is like a stick. Somebody touches the tail. It says the elephant is like rope. So I think at the end of the day, there's definitely going to be books, writings about the present president of the United States. But I think such books will be written according to people's individual experiences about him.
mhm,
In my commission, an autobiography. In my, a publishing company might think that there's need to write something about him. I think at the end of the day, such writings will be predicated upon how people experienced him, right? So
mhm,
somebody says if you don't want to be forgotten as soon as you are dead, either write things what writing about, or either do things worth writing about or write things worth reading. I think Trump has done both. He has done things worth writing about. He has written things worth reading about. So I
mm,
think at the end of the day, history, posterity will judge as to where he stands when it comes to documenting his history,
mm.
as a person. And you know that he also has written a couple of books. His family members, I think his niece has written a book about him also. So I think that a whole lot has been written about him, and I believe a lot will still be written about him.
Thank you, gentlemen, for those icebreakers. We'll dive in straight into the conversation of the day. As a reminder, we have Taiwo Akinlami. Taiwo is a writer. There is Solomon Atah, who is speaking from Cape Town. Solomon is a broadcaster communicator. Solomon also writes. Rodrigue Nyumia is a journalist and analyzes politics in a very fabulous manner, just like Deba Uwadiae, who is also international affairs analyst and consults with some Nigerian media organizations. He is the editor-in-chief and publisher of the New Americans magazine. Solomon, back to you. The United States may not be too present in Africa as many other European countries are. Yet, Africa and Africans have always had a soft spot in their hearts for America. Can you just describe the relationship between the United States and Africa, especially before January the 20th, 2025?
Thank you so much, Ernest. Yeah, I think the relationship between Africa and the United States before January 2025 has been very multifaceted. One can say historically marked
Mm,
both by trade relations alongside occasional political tensions. Not often agreeing on the same things at the same time. Of course, the U.S. has to deal with 54 different heads of states, each with their own various challenges. So the U.S. has always been a very strong cultural a partner who has ties with Africa, driven by humanitarian aid, education exchange programs, and on investments from U.S. companies in various sectors like energy, technology, agriculture. So despite the U.S. being somewhat less engaged than European countries, African nations have often looked to America as a beacon of democracy. That still remains. We use quite a lot of U.S. examples in polite conversations on dinner tables and firesides. innovation and strategic partner in addressing security challenges as well. So those are some of the areas that the US has
Mhm.
influenced and continue to give quite a bit of contribution. However, in the years leading to 2025, especially under President Trump's administration,
Mm.
relations became more transactional. And of course, I've heard other analysts on various other medias saying that President Trump is a very transactional president, and this has been very much less focused on mutual growth. So the Trump's administration seemed to, let's say, prioritize national interest. And I want to kind of emphasize on the national interest thing that this is kind of a wave. We look at the Sahel region, quote unquote, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, very much driving the Africanist national interest to some extent. There's quite a lot of nationalist interest being driven across Europe as well. So this is nothing new. So, and this is somewhat left Africa very much sidelined when it comes to how the continent interacted with the previous Trump administration, and perhaps that might signal how the relationship is going to be in this current administration, especially in comparison with regions like Asia and Europe. But of course, if you look at the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, for example, face uncertainty with a lot of inconsistent support for African initiatives. So again, to put it like this, you can say that the African countries, 5 days into the new administration, are not really, they can't really say how it's going to look. But of course, Trump has been having quite a few meetings with various other leaders, but we have not really seen some. Of course, prior to being inaugurated on the 20th, we haven't seen some of such meetings happening with African leaders, or at least not a lot of them have done so. So the atmosphere on the continent prior to Trump's inauguration is one of mixed feelings and concerns across Africa. While many African countries admire America's ideals, there's an undercurrent of skepticism about how President Trump, who has often made controversial statements about the continent, would shape U.S.-Africa relations. So I think that is somehow what I can sort of think about where we are now in terms of the continent at these early stages of Trump's administration.
Well, let us look forward to to seeing how it goes. It's still early, but it's obvious that the relationship between the United States and the continent will definitely be reshaped. I'll move over to Rodrigue now. So, Rodrigue, in 2016, Trump won the electoral college, but lost the popular vote, if you remember. And in
Marcel.
2020, his performance dropped drastically, resulting to a loss of the elections completely. However, he rose back in 24 to beat the 2016 record, sweeping the electoral college and, of course, winning the popular vote. As one of the Republicans in recent times who has done so. So tell us, did Trump do something really special to win this election, and not just do so, but do it so remarkably?
Yes. If you remember one of our conversation on this network, I had mentioned to you and the audience that Mr. Trump is a very good salesman, and so he, when he left Washington and went back to Mar-a-Lago, he looked back and realized that okay, the economy was suffering heavily post COVID, and he kind of designed the conversation to reflect the pocketbooks of America. And if you look critically, when people eat and their bellies are full, that is when they can talk about the other issues that concerns them. And Donald Trump realized that the American economy was hurting, inflation was off the roof. So he remained on the talking point that was affecting everyday's America. If you look at exit polling after this election, the number one thing across the board in both red and blue state in the mind of voters was the economy, and the economy. And then democracy, or the act of preserving democracy, was the second thing on their list. So the economy was affecting everybody. People have to have money to afford gas, they have to have money to afford groceries and all their daily livings. And so being a good salesman, recognizing the needs of the people, Donald Trump used that to elicit his base. 20 million people that voted in 2020, because if you remember, in 2020 there was a total of Joe Biden won the election. He had a total of about 83 million vote. This time around, Kamala Harris already only had about 60 million plus some votes. And so two things: one, some Democrats stayed home, they didn't show up to vote for their candidate because they were probably not excited about the candidate. Two, some of the voters, they cross-carpeted into the Republican Party because Donald Trump was selling what they were yearning for, which is their pocketbooks. There are other things after that, you look at the southern border, you looked at democracy, and you looked at abortion. These were very contentious topics. But the very primary thing on the mind of every voter on that very day on November 4th was the economy, Ernest.
Thank you so much, Rodrigue. We will come back to you. I'll move to Deba, and I'd like Deba to focus more on what affected the state which he covers more, which is immigration. And Deba, it is now 5 days since the administration got on board, and more than ever before, the immigrant community across the country, and even Ohio particularly, has been characterized by a lot of speculation. But before we even go deeper into the conversation, Deba, as a reporter who has been covering these states for this while, tell me, what are you observing on the ground? What are people saying in the immigrant community? When you look at people's faces, what is that telling you? Could you just paint us that picture?
Yeah, it's interesting because actually before the swearing in, when Donald Trump won, you have the immigrant community here in Columbus, Ohio. Most of them, getting worried, about what will happen, when Donald Trump comes in, or what will not happen. I tell you, it's on both sides. People who, who are living here legally, and those who are already citizens, So it cuts across what Trump will do and what Trump will not do. And when he came in, this last 5 days, almost 5 days, like you rightly pointed out, with the executive orders, he started bringing on. That brought so much anxiety, so much interest in the immigrant community, because people may say, oh, it's not affecting me because I'm here legally, but somehow it extends, And if you look at, since that day, there have been a lot of things, happening in the community. It's not just about, the executive order is not just about the birthright. There's also an executive order, which is realigning the United States of America refugee admission program. So that also is very particular to the immigrant community, because you have people who are still living here as refugees, who have not transmitted from being a refugee to being a green card holder, permanent resident, and also citizenship. So you have that. Then you also have, the issue of, securing our border and also the southern border. So all these affect, immigrants. And so latest that happened, in the Columbus community was the rumor, that was the fake story that was posted on social media that
about the ICE
and so that
raiding
about ICE, raiding. That's the United States
customs
immigration and customs. So that they raided a market. So you can imagine that caused a lot of fear, amongst people. And the fear is not as if people are not here legally, but the fear is that it's about the harassment, that if potential harassment, if they go to that international market. And so that story spread so fast that even our magazine became, we went viral because the first, within 12 hours, we had 12,000 viewers reading our story when we published the story that, it was not true, when we went to cover the place. And so that is the kind of, anxiety, in the new American community since the new administration came in. It's something that of most concern, not just in Columbus, but in the United States, because this morning I got a message from somebody in Canada with another fake video that was being shared. So now you can, about Saraga, and so you can now see how people are now exploiting the situation to tell lies, to want to bring down competitors. Because if I look at the issue of the Saraga International Market, definitely is the same person that is putting those things on social media so that people will be scared from going to that market, from going to buy things from there. Because if you read it very well, the first one that was posted, the same writing is what is in this one that is circulating today.
Well, those are some of the effects of what is currently going on. We'll come back to that. Thank you so much, Deba. Let me move on to Taiwo Akinlami. Taiwo, are you there?
I'm here.
Right. Beautiful. So Taiwo, Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship for children born after February the 19th this year, because as a matter of fact, it will go into effect after February the 19th. So that has also been, a big talking point. But it will be important for us to understand how the birthright citizenship thing works. What does it mean? So when you explain that, then we'll probably move forward. So what does this birthright citizenship thing mean, and which other countries in the world practice it?
Okay, thank you very much for having me once again. So I speak for the purpose of public education. So having taken time to understand and study what this subject matter, because of my interest in children, as a child's right advocate, I'm interested in everything that concerns children from pregnancy, even before conception, till 18 years old. And so anywhere I find myself, whether in Africa and the United States, I try to understand the rights that should accrue to such individuals who are my own constituency children. And by virtue of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, every child born in the United States has a right to the soil. There's rights by blood, which is the fact that there are two kinds of citizenship in this regard. There's birth right to the soil. Right to the soil means that by virtue of the fact that you are born somewhere, whether your parents are citizens of that country or not, you become a citizen of that country, right? And there's right by blood. Right by blood is that you are a citizen of the country, whether you are born there or not, if your parents are citizens of that country. For example, I have a son born in the United States, right? He's a citizen of the United States. He's also a citizen of Nigeria. He was not born in Nigeria, but by virtue of the fact that I'm a Nigerian, the mother is a Nigerian, he's also a Nigerian, so he carries dual citizenship. Now, that has been the order, for a for time, almost time immemorial. Now, but President Trump, passed an executive order, saying that that right to the soil has been cancelled. So what we now have is right by blood. You are either an American, when you are born in America, you're either an American because one of your parents is a citizen or permanent resident in America, which means if you are born in America and your parents are neither citizens nor permanent residents, even if you are a visitor, even if you are on H-1B, that is you are on a work visa, even if you are a student, anything, because a student is not a permanent resident. A student is a non-permanent resident. Somebody on O1 visa, H-1B, all of these people are non-permanent resident. If they have children, their children will not be citizens. So that is what the executive order has said. But it is important to also note that that executive order now has been blocked for 14 days, temporarily blocked by a federal court in the United States, saying that asking for argument as to the constitutionality of that executive order. So, but by the workings of the executive order, if within the 14 days, the court, either allows the executive order or places if the court allows the executive order in, after 14 days, it means that from that executive order was supposed to come into force 30 days from when it was promulgated. It means that it will kick in by February 19. Now, but if the court blocks it, then that becomes a journey. I believe it will go as far as the Supreme Court to decide whether a constitutional provision can be taken away by an executive order, right? And but there's something smart that I think that the protagonist of that executive order might also be by driving at. It is because they tied. If you read the executive order, they are very smart. They did not tie the executive order to only a constitutional provision. They tied it to a decided case, right? Which their own interpretation is that the 14th Amendment was wrongly interpreted by a particular locus classicus, which is a case that says that everybody born in America has the right to the soil. Now, I see them in the days ahead. Maybe they are going to begin to look at it. Maybe they are going to be asking the court. Maybe they are going to go to the Supreme Court by themselves and asking the court and argue before the Supreme Court to upturn that case the same way Roe versus Wade was upturned. That might be something they might be thinking about in the days ahead. Now, whether they are going to get that with the Supreme Court or not, that becomes a symposium discussion for another day.
Now, Taiwo, I'll stay with you, and maybe other members of this panel can chime in. So, this definitely is going to affect a particular continent or a particular part of the world more. We're talking about the developing world now. The birthright citizenship thing is not only American, right? We know other countries have had this before, and if whoever had this thought brought it up, it was because it did not sound awkward in a way. It is something that makes sense. It is logical. Africa did not bring this. I would understand that these things have been embedded in constitutions, right? In these countries. Now, I don't know. Decades down the road, countries are beginning to turn around when the countries that benefited from this had invested, their minds in it. Now, I don't live in Africa in the middle of the sea. Like, what is actually going on? Why is everybody, why is every country coming back to this decision? When exactly they know how it is going to affect a particular part of the world that benefits from it?
Well, let me start by saying that,
Rodrigue, maybe you can come in if okay.
Well, I was gonna say,
Apparently, we're
remember,
having some technical issues.
can, I'm right here, Mr. Kanjo. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was gonna say just briefly that, like I stated earlier, Donald Trump is a very good salesman, and if, as a master of policy, um, he is trying to protect what he calls the demographic of the United States, because who is coming into the United States, who is having their kids in the United States. But as a matter of politics, there is this conventional thought. It's not wisdom. I won't call it wisdom. It's an assumption that immigrants, when they come to the United States and they become eligible to participate in the politics of this country, they tend to vote left, Democrat. So this is something he had promised during the primary season and even in the fall, to say, okay, we're going to end this. But if you look at the research critically, you realize that immigrants are inherently conservative. They follow a lot of conservative policy. And Donald Trump, being as smart as he is, I'll give it to him, maybe for the wrong reason, he knew from when him and his administration thought about this, that it's going to get challenged in court. It is constitutionally embedded. It's not something that he's just going to get away with it. Some presidents, so many decades ago, did not sign it into an executive order to become something that the United States had in its constitution. It was an act of Congress. It was written in the constitution. So the only way for this to be effective is an amendment to that constitution. But he wants to be able to tell his base, he wants to be able to tell Republicans in the midterm elections that, hey, at least I tried. So it's something that you do knowing that it's not going to get you to where you want to go, but you want to use it as a selling point for future debates.
Hmm.
Ernest.
Right. Taiwo, you had something to add to it.
okay, well, I think it's deeper than that. That is a way to look at it. But if you look at, I think one thing that is clear is the fact that America is not the first country to stop citizenship by birth. In the United Kingdom, it was embedded in their constitution, but they changed it. In Germany, in different parts of the world. Now, the one of the leading Western countries now that still has citizenship by birth is Canada, then followed by places like Brazil, Uruguay, and all of those, Mexico, and all of those countries. Now, the point that I was making in the course of the week is the fact that, in as much as this is not a policy that many people welcome, but it appears to be the way the world is going, right? The world is going in the direction of protectionism. America is not the only country where protectionism is the order of the day. In the United Kingdom, it is taking roots, right? In Germany, it is taking roots. Even in some African countries, it is taking roots. In Canada, the prime minister have been forced to resign by these forces, right? There's a global movement asking people to go to their own. It is to thy tent, O Israel. That is the international politics right now. And because of that commitment, people are trying to look at the fact that there is minimum resources. We have to expend our resources on our people. It has to be America first. It has to be Britain first. It has to be Canada first. It has to be Germany first. That appears to be the trend. And it appears that every political party who is looking in that direction appears to be winning the support of the populace, because when you look at Brexit, when you look at that, Brexit came a little earlier because they're also looking at how do we make it Britain first. And when they put it in the hands of the people, that was a decision that the prime minister regretted. They put in the hand of the people. He put in the hand of the people. At the end of the day, they voted overwhelmingly to say they were leaving European Union. So I think that the way my mind is working really is that Donald Trump might not get through with this removal of citizenship by birth, but it is the future.
Okay,
it is the future.
I'll come back to you, Taiwo. Time for me to bring back Solomon. Solomon, you've been listening to the other speakers, and Taiwo just mentioned that it is a trend across the world that countries want to protect, to be protective, right? It is America first, it is Canada first, it is Britain first, and what have you. But again, like I said earlier, and this has always been my thought. So why take centuries or decades to have the other parts of the world that have basically been depending on some of the things the Western world provides, So why leave them at the middle of the road when they've already invested their minds and so many other things within your space? But that takes me back to find out what the continent was saying, the atmosphere that the atmosphere of the continent prior to Trump's inauguration last week. What were people saying? What were people expecting? Africans have been talking a lot, especially Africans who do not live in the United States of America. Everybody seems to be, so drowned in this Trump conversation. Could you just paint that atmosphere to us, Solomon?
Thank you, Ernest. I think that the panelists sort of concur with the fact that, like the previous speaker mentioned, that the nationalist sentiment is not just an American one. I think the world seems to be very interested in what is theirs, quote unquote, whatever that is. In this country that I live, there is actually an online movement called South Africans First. So I think it's a very important time for national interests to be foregrounded in political discourse. But it's also a bit of a challenge to gauge the continental sentiment in terms of sort of have a particular metrics to measure it, but the general discourses that you get on medias is that, and I think some of it is perhaps biased to some of the remarks that President Trump made in his first term that were not particularly savory towards Africa. But I also think that Africa is also very cognizant of the idea that they too ought to get their house in order not to be particularly dependent. Or some other school of thought might be that because of America's influence on the continent through structures like AFRICOM, the interest to immigrate, the interest to be more friendlier towards the continent is a subtext that is often not overtly discussed. But of course, in some schools also hold that the Republican policies have in some way been perhaps a bit more more generous, if you like, towards Africa. Of course, I remember when 43 was in office, there was a very particular interest through USAID that the AIDS programs were sponsored across the continent, and that was very, very it helped curb the HIV spread on the continent quite a bit. So Republican administrations have been somehow, you can say, friendlier, quote unquote, towards the continent. But that doesn't really wipe out, as you will see, as I mentioned in my earlier remarks, that look at the Sahel region, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Those are nationalists, really strongly nationalist-driven governments, if you like, which if you see this, the way that especially the youth in the continent, are responding to the current present leader of Burkina Faso now, you can see that they are in themselves very, very interested in nationalism, in some kind of a particularly defined sovereignty, which is not that which is accorded, but that which is claimed or which is asserted. So I think it's a sentiment that is opening itself up for more of such. Yeah.
Beautiful. We'll come back to that, Solomon. Thank you so much. You stay with us. I'll move now to Deba, and we'll talk Ohio a little bit again. Deba, prior to the election, Ohio was a hotspot, when it came to immigration, which was one of the topics highlighted in that election. But I would still say that Ohio is still in the news because after inauguration, Trump and his administration have been implementing those policies they said they were going to implement, and virtually every immigrant operation is halted, if not suspended. But I would also like to know from you, who covers Central Ohio and the state in general, how the immigrant community is planning to handle this situation, which is extremely critical. Also, how is the state of Ohio? Because, well, we have those immigrants here. Definitely, there is some uneasy calm that is running within the community. That should also alert the state, which has welcomed them. So, what is the state of Ohio doing? How is the immigrant community planning to handle this situation?
Yeah.
As a reporter on the ground, Deba.
Thank you very much. Easy calm is the right word. The vice president is from Ohio, and also before the election, Ohio was in the news, world global news. Everywhere, Springtown was talked about. Where they alleged that immigrants were eating pets, dog and cats, and so that brought so much focus, on Ohio. And I tell you, the governor of Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine, had continued to say that Ohio is a welcoming state to legal, immigrants, and that they are welcomed, And if you look at it, it's not just the Haitians, because in Springfield, it was the Asians, people from Haiti, that formed that bulk in Springfield because of the war that is going on, in Haiti. But we have very large concentration of people from Ukraine here. They have the largest community in Cleveland, Ohio. Then we have a very large community of Somali here in Columbus. We even have two people from Somali community who are in the House of Representatives, in Ohio State, the State House. And we have people, another refugee community that, immigrant community that came in here as refugee in those days, but most of them are citizens today from Nepal, Bhutan. And we have from Sudan, from Ethiopia. So you see that Ohio is not just, talking about immigration today. Ohio has been playing very significant role, in immigrants community, and also has been playing it very well, and that is why it's a bed for investment. A lot of businesses are coming here because you have the population, you have people who are ready to work, you have most of these big stores, big corporate organizations that are here. There are a lot of warehouses because it's a place where we have space. So a lot of people are coming here. Even in IT, now we have Google here. We have Yahoo.
Intel.
We have Facebook. We have all of them. All of them. They have places here. Even Intel. So that is what Ohio is. And I will tell you, all these organizations, all these businesses that I'm mentioning now, people they hire are legal because they are corporate organizations. Because before they hire, they do their background checks. And so, but because of what is being, what is coming out from DC, so you have this uneasy calm. How is it going to affect us? How is it going? Will it go back to? But I tell you one thing about America is that America, first of all, is the Constitution, whether you like it or not, is the Constitution. The countries that we are trying to compare America to, they have what we call unwritten constitution. And we know that there are written constitutions, there are unwritten constitutions, and there are differences in them because those unwritten constitutions, they are documents, they are legal decisions, they are traditions, that are put in there. But when it is written, the written constitution have precedence over this, legal decision, because by the time you look at it, you now decide based on what is in the constitution. And that is why America has stayed so long with this birthright, citizenship, because it is embedded 1868. You can imagine when. And so it takes time. Look, when you have to amend constitution in America, you will have to take it around 50 states. So it's not just those in the White House. Every state will decide.
Beautiful.
And it
1868.
For that one, it took 2 years.
1868, 2025.
So
that is a long time.
And we have birthright citizenship in 33 states, in 33 countries, sorry. So it's not just America.
Thank you, Deba.
We have them in 33 countries. So
Thank you, Deba. 1868, 2025. That is a very long time. Thank you so much, Deba. I'll come back to you. This is Apex One Radio. If you are just joining us, you're listening to Political Point, the edition of January the 25th, 2025. 5 days after Donald J. Trump was inaugurated, and he has become the 47th president of the United States of America. He will be serving the country for a second term, having done the first from 2017 to 2021, and taking a break and coming back. I'll go back to Rodrigue Nyumia. Rodrigue, in my layman mindset, I would imagine that inauguration day is meant to put on my nice suit, enjoy the protocol around me, walk on the red carpet, do the swearing, enjoy the pomp and pageantry, pop champagne, enjoy with my friends because I have gotten on the throne again, and perhaps not to start signing executive order on day one. Is it just an American thing, or it happens elsewhere in the world that hours after inauguration, the president start putting paper to pen, or why won't he just relax that night, then get up on Tuesday morning and start business?
You know, when you're running for president, you're making all these promises to your supporters, some of them very
Hmm.
unrealistic. And you want to
Okay.
come now across like, I told you that on day one, these were the things I was going to do. For instance, regarding um,
Okay.
in
Yes.
recent memory, the only president that I kind of look back at before coming onto the show that did not sign an executive order on day one was actually Bush 43. Quite interesting. After Bush
Okay.
43, um, Obama on day one signed a slew of executive order. Donald Trump did same back in 2016. So did Biden, and Trump just on his day one, I believe he signed
Hmm.
somewhere above 26 executive order. In total, he has rescinded about 80 Biden era policies as the president. So it's not unheard of in the United States, not very versed with how other countries do it, but these
Hmm.
are powers that are given to the president of the United States within your purview. You can do this, this, and that. And for somebody that is big on making a statement, is big on wanting to be looked at as the change agent. I remember
Hmm.
Donald Trump on his campaign said, I'm not like Washington, I'm going there to change it. So he couldn't sleep one night without making his voice heard. And it's by opening a Sharpie gate at at the White House, at the Oval Office, and signing this slew of executive order. Some of which
But
I want to
Roderick, sorry, I'm not cutting you short. But since
go
in
ahead.
politics,
Yeah.
since in politics, every action has an interpretation. Every action is a communication. Can't we look at this day one signing of executive orders as retribution or retaliation? Because the way it looks, it's like, okay, I finally got the power and I'm going to start nailing my opponents.
Yes, exactly. You can look at it that way. That's one way to look at. Now, you can decide also to pick each order he signed and examine them individually.
Mm,
Conventionally, yes, I agree with you 100%. It's like now I have power, I can do more than you think I can do.
mm,
But if you look at, for instance, he withdrew the United States from from the World Health Organization and give a logical explanation for it. Now, if you're emotional, you won't get him. But he said, listen, the Chinese people have 1.3 billion people. The United States have 300 million people. Make it make sense to him. Convince him otherwise. Why the United States will pay $500 million into this organization, and the Chinese people only pay $39 million? That's a logical argument to make. So, and to echo what one of the panelists said, it is along those lines of protectionism. Let's protect the country, let's protect our wealth. Let's not be, to put it simply, be everybody's big brother. Let's not take care of the world's problem. Let us take care of our own. So
mm.
yes, it to a greater extent is to flex power. Now I have power, I can do one, two, three. But if you set back and you look at it individually, like, okay, having to sign an executive order to issue more licensing for oil company to drill oil that is in the United States, will be a flex to his political opponent, because typically will say no, that is not climate friendly. But he's here to say no, we can do it, and that is gonna like increase energy production in the United States. And if you and I have experienced the inflation in the last couple of years, energy is the driver of more almost everything that happened in the United States, and probably elsewhere in the country. Ernest.
Ernest, are you
Mm.
there?
Thank you so much, Rodrigue. I'll come back to you quickly and briefly. Taiwo, let me find out from you. I do understand that you have a legal background as well. You are a lawyer, of course. You've practiced law in Nigeria, and I'm told that law is not retroactive, which means that if you were born in the United States of America by parents living illegally in the country, right, before February 19th, 2025, you are a citizen? Because I'm asking the question because some kids born in this country might start expressing fears that maybe sometime down the road they can be described as non-citizens, even when they were born here and by illegal or parents living here illegally. So, are you assuring them that someday the law will not
These
turn
are
back and hound them?
well, these are uncertain times. One thing you can be sure of, you see, I from my understanding of the law, I read law in Nigeria, and I've practiced law in Nigeria for 25 years. And as a lawyer, I have come to understand that it's not only the the legislators that make laws. Are you getting it? The judiciary also make laws. There are laws in the annals of United States today that are made by the judiciary. Take Roe versus Wade, for example. This was a constitutional interpretation. This same 14th Amendment.
Is that supposed to be so, Deba?
One Supreme Court.
We understand that lawmakers belong to the
So let me
legislative
land,
body.
please. Let me land.
Okay, go ahead.
One Supreme Court said women have right over their body. Another note, the constitution was not amended. Another Supreme Court came and said women do not have right over their body. Are you getting it? Now, the 14th Amendment is yet to be amended, but the Supreme Court has taken a decision. It is important for us to note that when somebody has political will, there are many ways they can go about their political will, particularly if they have the judiciary on their side. We must take that on board, So having said that, as it is today, a court has stopped temporarily the executive order. The preponderance of thinking is that the court will finally stop him and he will have to go through amendment. I don't think so, right? It might be, that's a pathway, and that's the way everybody is looking at it. I've read tons of opinion on this matter. I've listened to lawyers who are practicing in the US. I see that they are thinking traditional way. But for me, I'm not a traditional, I don't think traditional. I try to look at all the angles, because you remember Jesus made a statement. He said, the Sabbath is made for man, no man for the Sabbath. It is human beings that make law, and it's human beings that manipulate the law. One of the most powerful things that can be manipulated in this world is the law. Now, I'm glad that we have somebody joining us from South Africa. When Mandela was sent to jail, it was not illegal, it was legal. It was the law of South Africa that sent Mandela to jail, and he spent 28 years in prison. The people who sent him to jail were implementing the law of South Africa. Are you getting it? So law in itself is an instrument. The American Constitution is not sacrosanct to the extent that it cannot be changed, or the courts cannot change it, or the court cannot give interpretation to it. It is important. One thing that is important that we note, these people, people underrate Trump a lot. These people who drafted this thing for him, and when they sat down together to do this thing, they have put a case there, giving you an idea that they may go to test this case in the Supreme Court is a possibility. Let's wait for the days ahead. It might happen, it might not happen. They might be seeing it, they may not be seeing it. But what I'm saying is that for me, what concerns me about all of these things is the fact that my interest, I'm an African, right? I don't want to call myself a Pan-Africanist, but I'm always watching out for the interests of my continent. You understand? And when it comes to all of this is that we are saying, where does Africa stand in all of this? It is important that is the most important thing for me. What is the fate of Africa in the face
What is the fate of Africa? Where does Africa stand?
Can say America first. Can Africa say Africa first? Are you getting
important question? I'll come back to you. Taiwo. This is Apex One Radio. We are gradually but steadily moving to the end of this program. We can talk a lot about this, but let's go back to Cape Town. Solomon, given the evolution of things, I want you to tell me. What would be the mission, of American diplomatic missions on the continent, with this new administration saying that America first. We are pulling out of the WHO. We are only doing stuff that have to do with America. Yet America has embassies across the world. Now, everyone is expressing fear. Taiwo just said that anything can happen at any time. So, can we also say that at some point, U.S. embassies across the continent will just be window dressing, uh, 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 outfits?
Thank you, Ernest. I would hesitate to support that view. I would almost say that no, they will not be. I think that U.S., the United States of America, remains a very important superpower in the world, influencing culture across the board, across the world. So it is a very, very important country in human history. So its contribution to the world is not only limited to the current administration. I think that the US will continue to play its role beyond what this administration has, especially in terms of its relationship with the continent of Africa. However, I think the general sort of position will be that Africa in itself is also very aware that one can say is very aware that things might not continuously be the same in terms of how U.S. policy views Africa. But because the United States is an important superpower and influences global policy in global affairs, it is always in the interest of global participants on the world stage to be able to have a good relationship with a country as the United States. So, in that light, it would always be left to diplomats, of course, via the embassies, to continuously manage this relation and tease out important aspects as they see fit that applies to the various countries, of course, the 54 countries on the continent. So diplomats have their work cut out for them. All
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ernest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Rodrigue, Nyumia, let me bring you back and we narrow it again to American politics. So Rodrigue, for the past couple of months, since after election, or even before, well, let's just say after the election, it has only been Donald Trump, Elon Musk, right? But we don't hear the Republican Party under whose banner Trump ran. So who should take the flowers? Only Donald Trump and Elon Musk and the other billionaires who are now appearing on the stage to steal the show, or the Republican Party, which is in power. They've won Congress. They have a majority in both chambers in Congress. Yet nothing is being said about the Republican Party. It is only Donald Trump. It is only Elon Musk. How would you explain this phenomenon, Rodrigue?
Because Donald Trump himself is a phenomenon, if you like.
That's
So
a
when
beautiful
he
way to
came to
put
the
it.
Republican Party, he presented himself like an outlier. He's like a businessman. I am from Queens in New York. I'm going to do deals. Now, it turns out this is what majority of Americans or most Americans like. So he became the standard bearer. He became the torch bearer of the Republican Party. So what I would say is, in the nutshell, the powers, the flowers have been delegated to Donald Trump by the Republicans. Because remember, in the primary season, they had a slew of candidates, also very qualified candidate, about four former governors, one current governor at the time, the governor of Florida, and the former vice president also ran in the primary. And you see that the Republican Party knew what they wanted, so they chose Donald Trump as their standard bearer. And so now that he's the man in the forefront, of course, Elon Musk is regarded as a genius. That is why you're hearing his name a whole lot. And until 2020, believe you me, Elon Musk was a Democrat, or he leaned and donated heavily to the Democratic Party. So the Republican Party were able to sell something to Elon Musk and other billionaires that made them cross over, and now they're like the elites in the Republican Party. You're hearing their names more than you're actually hearing about the party. But of course, Donald Trump will come and go, and the party will remain. So we're looking forward to see what happens when Trump is gone. Ernest.
Well, let's look forward to let's look forward to that beautiful analysis there, Rodrigue Nyumia. Deba, so in what ways is this current situation going to affect or have a psychosocial bearing on the people who live in the immigrant community? We do understand that the community already has a lot of challenges, but with this new challenge of fear, how what is the effect, like the impact this can really have on this community?
Yeah, there's that uneasiness. There's it's not just out of maybe there'll be mass deportation or there will not be mass deportation. It's out of things that go with it. The chain, other collateral things that go with it. Yes, people are immigrants. There are people in the immigrant community. First of all, there is that stigma when you open your mouth in public and you have an accent. And so this present situation will, cause attraction. People will look at you when you speak, in the public, especially when you go for an event. And what comes to their mind, oh, he's an immigrant. And they start thinking, did he come here legally or not? That is one thing. Even before now, I'm the only, African American in the State House. A lot of times when we go for assignment, you still see it. I went to one assignment and somebody was so curious to want to know. I know why he came to me, to want to know why, I was there. He came and he asked me, he said, are you a cop? Meaning, am I a security person? So in his mind, I could only be there if I am from the security service. So you can imagine that is before now. That was about 6-7 years ago. And so now, what will be happening in the immigrant community is that uneasiness wherever they go. But I can tell you, Franklin County, where we are is very welcoming, very welcoming. We know there might be, few people who want to misbehave, but Franklin County, where we are, is very welcoming. The city, the mayor of the city is very welcoming too, and they have programs, even right now for immigrants. And you asked what is the community? We have agencies, non-profit organizations. They've already started. They started educating, the immigrant community, what they need to do, the ETSS, the CRIS, different, even the New American Community Information Center. And so people are being educated on what to do, on how to present themselves, on how to carry themselves, on things to hold, because you don't know. They may be, it has not happened. There could be a raid somewhere, so things like that. But I can tell you there is that uneasiness, no matter what is going on.
Thank you. Let me go back to Taiwo. And now, Taiwo, on the heels of Trump's inauguration, you wrote a post on Facebook talking about the automatic birthright cancellation. And even though you are a child rights advocate and you probably sympathize with how some parents may feel about this, you also cautioned African leaders to rise and start thinking of fixing, the things they have spoiled within the past decades. So, are you saying you would be more proud as an African if a child is born in Africa and bears, the birth certificate of their country?
Well, I think the conversation is about my concern. I come from a background of civil rights activism.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised from age 18. I started living with my uncle Chief Ganifayemi, who trained me and helped me to see life beyond my comfort zone. Helped me to see that the best way to live is to advocate for others, and the best place to advocate, for the rights of people is your homeland. And so when all of this began to happen, I'm not an advocate for protectionism. I'm not an advocate for American first, right? But what began to occur to me is that the world is going in the direction of to the extent of Israel. And most of the time in Africa, we don't hold our government accountable. We always look the other way. We can run to America. We can run to Canada. We can run to Germany. We can run to Europe. A time is going to come where Europe cannot take all of us. America cannot take all of us. And what America is going to take is the best of us. Europe is going to take the best of us, right? Germany is going to take the best of us. Canada is going to take the best of us. Trump wants to take the best of us. President Trump is not opposed to immigration. He's just looking for the best of us, right? The best brains in Africa to come to the US and, make things better for the United States. I began to think and I began to ask the question, when do we begin to hold our government accountable so that we don't put our salvation in the hands of foreign powers? We can begin to build an Africa that is habitable. The rate at which people are living in Africa today particularly Nigeria, is unprecedented. Schools are losing students. They call it Japa. Banks are losing staff. People are moving en masse because of the state of the nation. We are over 200 million people. All of us cannot move. If all of us cannot move, and we see the way the world is now looking, Canada is saying Canada first. Germany is saying Germany first. Even Burkina Faso is saying Burkina Faso first. Mali is saying Mali first. Niger is saying Niger first. And there's a statement the gentleman from South Africa said, these three countries in Africa that are saying their country first, they have energized the youth. See the kind of welcome that the Niger president received when he went for the swearing in Ghana. I mean, it was rousing. That's a military government, right? She should not receive that kind of welcome. But the truth of the matter is
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, yes. The youth are looking for another expression. And today, when power was taken in Niger, some Nigerians were saying, God, where are you? We are praying in Nigeria. You are answering in Niger. Now, those were treasonable statements that Nigeria were making publicly. And they couldn't pick up anybody. That shows that the people are tired of the political order in Africa. They are looking for something new. So my article was to say, we need to demand accountability from our leaders. Citizenship by birth policy or the executive order of President Trump, for me, is a wake-up call. It's a type of wake-up call. The direction in which the world is going right now, it is interesting to note that it's only Canada and the United States among all the first world countries that still have citizenship by birth. It's a matter of time. Every country is going to try to improve the quality of citizenship. And so when they try to improve the quality of citizenship, they wouldn't want people to come and give birth in their country and just go away. Now, so that is going to be the future. But in this future, let's even agree. Let me just conclude. Let's assume without conceding that America wants to self-destruct by saying it's America first. Canada wants to self-destruct by saying it's Canada first. Germany wants to self-destruct. They have the right to self-destruction, all of those countries. But if they take those decisions, and now at the end of the day, we as Africans, we cannot stand tall and say, okay, Africa first. These are the ways we want to begin to do things. Then it means that our lives and our destiny is now tied to the apron string of international bodies. That is why, as Africans, we must arise and hold our government accountable.
We must rise and hold our governments accountable. Africa must rise and hold its leadership accountable. Taiwo, thank you so much. When I come back to you, it'll be 30 seconds. Then we run off. Let me go to Cape Town, to Solomon, for the last question. Solomon, even as we brace, to hold our leadership accountable, Africa is still in distress, and whether we like it or not, the truth is that Africa still needs support. Africa still needs aid, right? So I'll quickly read this, then I want you to take a few take 30 seconds to comment. Listen to this carefully. As of fiscal year 2024, the United States provided nearly 6.6 billion in humanitarian assistance across sub-Saharan Africa, source US aid. However, recent developments indicate a potential shift in US foreign aid policy. On January 24th this year, that's just 6 days ago, no, just 1 day ago, that was yesterday, the State Department announced a comprehensive freeze on new funding for most foreign aid programs worldwide, excluding emergency food aid and military assistance to Israel and Egypt. This suspension, anticipated to last at least 3 months, could significantly impact aid allocation to health, education, development, and other critical programs in Africa. The source is AP News. Then, given these changes, the future of US aid to Africa remains uncertain, and the annual assistance may be subject to reductions or reallocations based on the outcomes of ongoing policy review. The source is Reuters news agency. Now, America has withdrawn from the World Health Organization. Solomon, I said that whether we like it or not, Africa, or at least some parts of Africa, still need aid. We still have poverty. There is still a war, disease, and what have you. Does this picture, what I just read, does it look frightening? What impact can this have on the continent? Solomon?
I don't think it looks frightening to the extent that it might suggest. I think that Africans are very interested in their own sovereignty in all aspects that they claim. Even though aid has been part of the African experience, foreign aid, especially from the US, however, Africa is also making adjustments. As you've seen, some countries in Africa, some sources have said, have actually rejected loans by international loaning firms that were earmarked as they have always done. And there has also been quite strong remarks made regarding some of the damages that structural adjustment programs in the mid-80s have caused. So all these mechanisms, all these economic mechanisms and instruments that have been, in some cases, forced on the continent are not necessarily continuously welcomed, especially in areas where self-sufficiency and self-determination is beginning to take a very strong foothold. But however, considering how international powers such as the US also takes from the continent in various forms through their multinationals, in terms of the quantity of business that they conduct through their companies in the continent, some of this aid remains a very important part for meeting with our health challenges and various forms of economic challenges that the continent still face. But like I said earlier, the continent continuously makes adjustments, and of course we continue to even do better. And of course, even within the context of this current U.S. administration, the diplomats will get to work various, and I was actually making some other comments on another platform about the fact that executive orders, and we heard even Trump himself saying these are policies, and they still have to be tested, perhaps in the law, in the court of law. They still have to, their policies are not actually law. So they might signal, like one of the panelists mentioned, they might signal the direction of his administration from day one, but they still have to be tested in the real world. And with the general new day that Africa has today, Africa remains very optimistic, very resilient to take on whatever challenges. I'm sure our history has been able to show that the continent is very resilient, the continent is very poised, the continent is, we've seen some of the developments, even in the DRC, very strong voices coming through from there regarding specific political issues there. You've heard various voices around the Sahel region, which is becoming a very inspiring, Ernest, a very inspiring region that the continent tends to start referencing quite a bit in political discourses. And all of that put together is beginning to create some form of a new dawn, which also energizes the continent to look to meet its challenges. And I think that it's fair to say that the continent will meet its various challenges nonetheless.
Africa has no choice than to meet its challenges nonetheless. And like Solomon said, the continent is not known for its resilience. Rodrigue, will come back to you for your last round. I would like you to help us again understand this other phenomenon in American politics. So remember before the elections, we saw Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. He was all over the place, brilliant young man who attracted a lot of attention. He, of course, he comes from your state. But then, soon after Americans went to the polls, that name started disappearing. Then comes inauguration. And again, after inauguration, it is only Donald Trump we are seeing signing the executive orders. This is going to be an action-packed mandate from every indication. Where will J.D. Vance be? Does he just relegate himself in the background and Trump does the rest?
No, so J.D. Vance, the purpose for which Donald Trump chose him to be his running mate was to do the dirty job, if you like. If you remember, in the last leg of the campaign, he was the one that was put forward in most media appearances. But since their election, and Trump nominated a slew of people to his cabinet positions. You are looking at the Secretary of Defense that got confirmed yesterday by a tie-breaking vote late last night at 10 p.m. by J.D. Vance, because we had Republicans like Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski who said, nope, we are not putting our vote on this one. So J.D. Vance has been, Kristen Noem, Tulsi Gabbard, that has been nominated for the Director of National Intelligence. These people are not favorable within the Republicans in Congress. So, in as much as J.D. Vance is not glaring, it's not being seen in the day-to-day things that are happening in the White House or on TV, but he's working the legs. He is working the roots. He's walking the phones to make sure that the cabinet, because remember, he just left from the Senate into the White House. So he still has friends in the Senate where he has to go and court them to make sure that most of Trump cabinet picks are nominated, confirmed, and sent out so they can start doing their jobs. I know it would look right to see him in every official event, to hear his name more, but Trump is a more controversial person and is out there. JD Vance is walking behind the scene. Very interesting as well.
maybe before you go, it would be interesting for us to also learn more about Trump's cabinet with 13 billionaires, of course, with Elon Musk as one of the shining figures in it. Why bringing business people on a political, because that's a typical political platform, whether you like it or not. Being in the cabinet, it's political, whether you like it or not. And these are people who are coming from the business world, perhaps some of them with zero experience in politics.
Now, you look at it, Trump is an outlier, right? If you look at all the career politicians that are in Washington, he is an outlier. He came in 2016 with his business experience, made it, wasn't so fortunate in 2020, and is back in 2024. Here is his argument, and I've listened to him. The one thing I did in the last season was try to follow him in all of these podcasts. He was presenting it like, listen, these brilliant people have been successful in running their businesses. They are not billionaires for no
Mm.
reason. I'm not saying that their businesses are pristine. No, it has its downfalls. But look at it globally. If these people can successfully run a business, make the same billionaires, then you can extrapolate from there that they're going to bring their genius ideas to his administration and move America to the next level where it needs to be, Ernest.
Okay, apparently we're having some issues there with Roderick. Hopefully, we are still on the airwaves. Let's see if Roderick is back. He's frozen there. Roderick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
But he
you.
concluded. I thought he concluded. Ah, everybody is gone. Uh-uh. Ṣé ẹ̀ ń gbọ́ mi, sir?
gbogbo ẹ bóyá time yẹn ti lọ.
Okay, I guess we are back on.
Yeah,
We are
we
back
got
on. We are back on the air. Sorry for that technical hitch. We lost Roderick, but we'll be running off with everyone. I guess Roderick is back. He will take a few seconds to run off. Okay, Roderick, you are back. A few seconds to run off.
Yeah, so I was just explaining that the idea about Trump bringing billionaires into his cabinet, he had long explained and said these people are geniuses in their different domain, be it tech, foreign exchange, import and export. They have made it big, and he was trying to make an argument that bringing these great minds into his administrations, some of them officially and some of them unofficially, because if you look, the department where Elon Musk is going to be working is not really an official government department. It is not budgeted for. It's never existed before. It is short term. But the general idea is that by the end, these people would have brought in this great idea, in his opinion, that will move the country forward in a positive direction.
Mm. Roger, want to thank you so much for joining us on this show. Thank you so much for your brilliant analysis, and hopefully we'll be back again not too long from now to continue the story, because, like I said, it's going to be an action-packed Donald Trump Monday. Thank you so much, Roderick.
Thank you.
Right. I'll bring Deba on the platform for his last word. So, Deba, I would like us to go to live with this one. Some time ago, I remember a couple of years ago, precisely in 2016, when the New Americans magazine organized its immigrant awards.
Yeah.
The mayor of Columbus, Andrew Ginter, mentioned emphatically that the immigrant community contributes significantly to the economic growth of Columbus, and that's been said over and over. Now, this is a community that is in some crisis that could lead to a whole chunk of it, being downsized. especially when mass deportation comes to mind. So, tell us how the state of Ohio could lose economically if the immigrant community is greatly affected with by this new order.
Yeah, we know that, like I said earlier, the governor, recognizes this. The mayor recognizes they recognize the contribution of immigrants to the economic development and growth of, you know, of um, of Ohio State. We know that in Columbus, they contribute, according to Immigration Council in 2022, they contributed about, in tax, they paid about 7 billion, in taxes, and spent about 18.6 billion. That was the Immigrant Council report in 2022. This is, this is huge. But one thing I want to say is that those that are contributing this amount, significant number of them, they live here legally. They live here legally, and so those who will continue to come to Columbus, they will live here legally. The thing is that some of them are using the work permit, So these are the people that may, have that concern about, especially those that are using the temporary protection status, what we call TPS. And so, and they are also, very appreciable number, in all these. And when we're talking about Springfield, these are people, most of them in Springfield are using the TPS, which is the temporary protection status, because there is war in their country. And so when there is a problem in people's country, war or natural disaster, they are allowed to come to the United States using that TPS status, which is the temporary protection status. And so we have a lot of them here using that temporary protection status. So that is why they say, oh, immigrants are paying, these people are paying taxes. So these are people that are using that protection status to work. And so they work legally. They are here legally because they have that document. And so these are the people that, when it comes to, okay, let's see what happens. These are the people it will affect, because already the Attorney General of Ohio State, who is contesting for governorship in 2026, he has already declared to contest. He led other attorney generals, about 12 of them, to challenge and review the TPS. This is somebody that is going to be governor of Ohio State. He led other attorney generals to submit a report to the White House, that the White House should review the TPS, that certain TPS have been reviewed, they have been extended, because after it's 2 years, so after every 2 years it is renewed. The government last week, and that is the last government, last week they extended that of Ukraine for 2 years, for Sudan and Haiti for 2 years, so for another 2 years. So now what our Attorney General is saying is that, oh, don't renew anymore, because you've renewed some for a while. And so these people, if the government accepts it, there will not be renewal for these people. And so you can imagine, when it is not renewed, you'll be advised to leave, especially if you've not married an American, to be able to get a green card, So that's what it means. So it will affect us. That 7 billion, that 18 billion will probably drop, in terms of what we get from tax and what immigrants contribute.
Deba, I want to thank you so much for joining this conversation. And like I said, we will put up another one and many more because there's so much to talk about. Deba, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I will have Taiwo just before I conclude with Solomon. Now, Taiwo, you wrote somewhere that the path forward demands resilience, strategic planning, and a relentless focus on bringing undeniable value on the table. And that table, to you, is that that world stage where bargaining is done, right? So I contribute more. I have more benefits. That's your argument. But I would like to look at this way and ask you about what you envisage, right? And also connecting it to children. Now, the children who are being born in Africa today, are you of the opinion that these children or the young people in Africa today should see what is going on, should learn a lesson, should observe the trends, and look back on their continent and not fall perhaps in the trap or commit the same mistakes which perhaps you and I and the current leadership of the continent have committed? Should that be a big challenge if this narrative has to change to a point where Africa will no longer depend on the West? So would you challenge the young people today to that?
Well, I challenge the young people to fight for a new Africa, to hold their government accountable. That is very, very important. A passport, the value of a passport is the value of the nation. Mr. Deba is an American citizen, right? He can enter how many countries? Just carry his bag and just enter any up to 120 something countries in this world. He just carry his bag. He doesn't need to go to embassy. He just goes because of the value of the country in which he's a citizen. There was a time we didn't, until 1987, Nigerians did not collect visa to the United Kingdom. But as we continue to define our nuisance value, right, as Mr. Alakunle will put it, in 1987, they stopped us from entering UK without visa, right? Africans do a whole lot to get out of Africa, to go and look for greener pasture. And I mean, it's understandable. But what I'm saying is that today we must look onto our nation. If you read Dambiza Moyo, she wrote about the dead aid, the fact that why aid is not the way forward for Africa. Because the one who gives is the hand of the one who gives is always on top. The one who gives to you will always have a say over you. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. And so for me, what I want Africans to understand is that what is happening across the world is a clarion call to us to add value to ourselves. So that when we come to the table, we can come with something to offer. Now, immigration policies across the world is always plucking out the best brain to their side, right? Look at the immense contribution Mr. Deba is making through the New American Magazine in Ohio. The first Black man, he came to this place like every other person, and he began to add value. And on the basis of the value that he's adding, he's on one-on-one with the governor. That is the kind of thing I'm talking about. We must position ourselves in a way that that same value that Mr. Deba is able to bring to the table in America, he started bringing it to the table in Nigeria, where he excelled. He didn't run away from Nigeria because of greener pasture. He excelled in what he was doing in Nigeria. He exported it to the United States. That is the kind of mind that can win anywhere in the world. And so what I'm saying in essence is that we must, as a continent, begin to ask ourselves critical questions. How do we add value for ourselves? How does the Nigerian passport enter 120 something countries? How do we get to that point? How does the South African passport enter 130 countries? How does our passport become as powerful as the Singaporean passport, the American passport, the Canadian passport, the German passport, the first world passport? How come when we come to the Committee of Nations, we are the one looking for visa, running around? Do you know what it means to get a visa appointment in Nigeria? Months. months you are going to be there because you want to come to the US. Some people go through the road, they go through serious, dangerous adventure to get to the US. It's because Africa is not working. And we cannot deceive ourselves about that. How do we make Africa a darling of the world? How do we begin to bring out values? We don't need aids. That's the truth, because we have enough resources. Do you know how rich Nigeria is? Do you know how sub-Saharan Africa alone, how rich we are? It is because these resources are being mismanaged by some few people. They call them cartel, they call them oligarch. They are the ones sitting on the wealth and the hopes, yearning, and aspiration of Nigerians. It is time for Nigerians to begin to demand for leadership, to begin to demand for our commonwealth to be equally distributed. My country, Nigeria, 20 million children are out of school. 20 million. Now there is a UBE Act in Nigeria that says every child in Nigeria should have access to education for the first 9 years. Now there are monies in different states in Nigeria, over 30 states, billions of naira of federal funding that has been given to them to send their children to school. Those governors are not ready to provide counterpart funding. So because they are not ready to provide counterpart funding, 32 billion is lying flat in the account of the federal government. And this state government, nobody is asking them questions. So, but the government is also happy that people can go to America, they can go to Europe, because that gives people a false hope of what can happen. But when the people now know America is a no-go area, Canada is a no-go area, UK is a no-go area, they will learn to hold their government accountable. That is my thinking, and that is the pathway for Africa, not for us to run away from our countries.
The pathway for Africa, it's to build that solid foundation where passports from the various African countries can become really valuable across the world. Taiwo, thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Do have a fantastic rest of the weekend, and I'm running off with Solomon. So, Solomon, do all these conversations boil down to the point, or boil down to the fact that Africa or African leaders have to start thinking and thinking of taking the continent to a point where dependency will be a thing of the past. So should Africa go the Goita way, the Kagame way, the Traore way?
Thank you, Ernest, again for that question. I think it's very challenging and difficult to speak for almost 1.3 billion people. I think that African leaders are thinking. African leaders, in their own right, are doing what they possibly can, even though from a certain vantage point, one is able to comment that they are not doing their best. However, African leaders are caught within a rock and a hard place. Some of the problems that African leaders are facing are created or were created over centuries and centuries and centuries of oppression. Just take the past 500 years, for example. There's been slavery. There's been various forms of very vicious and brutal colonial project. There is currently a post-colonial project that is as vicious and is as treacherous and is as dangerous and, of course, limiting the human potential development in the continent. So that is where African leaders are caught up in between the continuous oppression that is meted on it by various foreign powers, including colonial powers and various forms of powers, economic and political, etc. And they're continuously demonstrating quite demonstrable resilience in terms of trying to protect the continent, trying to manage the continent to the best of their abilities. So living on the continent and experiencing it in various parts of the continent is there are visible opportunities that show that Africa is building its own path. Even though it belongs to the family of nations, it's a massive continent with almost, like I said, 1.3 billion people. But again, it shows that the various challenges are coming to bear every day because of the various histories that we have experienced. For that reason, it would not be fair to just dump the blame on the various African leaders and go away. It will be based, I think it should be, if I may, there should be an opportunity to contextualize it, to look at the various complexities that have brought the continent to be grappling with the various challenges that they are faced today.
So, no, we've seen Africa gotten on the technology superhighway. Africans are consuming technology and moving with the times. Do you think that this could also be one of the contributions to Africa's growth, especially at a time when Africa will no longer be dependent on the Western world?
I think that continuously all nations of the world will still require various forms of collaboration for growth, for collective growth. I have argued elsewhere that the future of shared global prosperity will be driven by BRICS countries and the global South and, of course, the East, considering that China, India, South Africa, Brazil, Russia sits in BRICS, and now there's 9 partner countries, and there's now actually 10 countries in BRICS. If you look at this collective together, that is where I suspect and I submit that future global growth will come from. If you then look at the way African countries are participating in the world, in the family of nations, you will see that there is potential for growth. And I think on that optimistic note, I would like to hang my hopes that Africa is on a good footpath. Even though it has its challenges, it is coming to terms with its challenges. It has been doing so over the past, like in the country that I live in, South Africa. We've overcome apartheid over the past 30 years. There's democracy, there's a growing need for democracy, and people are voting every 5 years, voting in council elections, they're voting in presidential and parliamentary elections. And we live in a constitutional democracy. So, and you can see what's happening in Ghana, in Botswana. You can see other countries that are beginning to, and of course, there's quite some of the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. Ethiopia, Angola, etc. These are examples of the continental resilience that we continue to experience.
There is definitely light at the end of the tunnel for a continent whose resilience is remarkable. What a beautiful way of ending. What a beautiful positive note way of ending by Solomon. Atah. Solomon, thank you so much for joining us on this very great conversation we have had, and hopefully you'll be back not too long from now so that we can pick some other angles of this conversation and see how we can address them. Solomon, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ernest.
And so that's how we are putting a full stop to this special conversation we've had on the Trump administration, which has been in power for the past 5 days. Special thanks to everyone who listened to this show. I'm thinking of Dr. Ngalim Bernard, who has been providing his moral support in the background. Thank you so much, Frank Zuru, for being a part of this conversation as well. We're also thinking of you, Oluwatoyin Olaltan, and scores of you who listened to the show on our various social media platforms. Then, if you were on apex1radio.com, thank you so much. And so, it is on that beautiful note, and of course, the note of hope, that we are running off this conversation. Stay strong, just be more creative, be more innovative. When one door closes, another one opens. That's just life. Marcel Adig was the producer of this show. My name is Ernest Kanjo. I'll be with you again for yet another edition of Political Point not too long from now. Do have a fantastic rest of the weekend, and may God bless you.